All right, so today on the Power of Our Story, we have Max Bloom as our storyteller. Max is a Navy SEAL. He is the host of the ScuttleButt show, and he is actually in Japan now, so it's 3 a.m. in the morning, and I am honored to have him here on the show. Max, welcome.
Thank you. I have to correct you right off the bat. I was not a SEAL. I was what they call an enabler. So I worked with SEALs, but my job was flying drones. So I was not actually a SEAL. We were in the Naval Special Warfare community. There's a bunch of different jobs that sailors can do to support special operations without actually being SWCC, SEAL, EOD, Green Beret, Raider, all the specific pinned, special forces, SOCOM, MOSs and jobs. They have support staff, and that's what I did.
Thank you for that, because my brain said he is a Navy veteran, but somehow my mouth said you were a Navy SEAL, because I think I was on to sharing that you're also a fellow at the Honor Foundation. So
Yes.
anyway, thank you for the correction, and just really happy to have you here, Max. Just want to put a little plug in for Max's the ScuttleButt show. If you haven't seen it, he does a great job. He's very personable. There's just an ease about his show and his discussions. And they're very interesting too. So Max, I've really enjoyed your show, and I would just encourage other people to visit it. He's on all platforms too. So anyway, Max, tell us a little bit about your background. What was it like for you growing up, and what made you want to join the military?
Yeah. Thank you for the question. Thanks for the plug too. We like to have a good time on the ScuttleButt show. So if anybody wants to come join us there, it's always fun. I grew up in New York in a town called Poughkeepsie. It's just north of the city. And maybe if people from that area might know it, but it's difficult to spell. And if you're not from up there, probably equally as difficult to find on a map. I didn't have a great family life growing up. Parents who struggled with addiction. It got my mom. She passed away, unfortunately. My dad remarried. I had a really bad relationship with my stepmom that sort of drove a wedge in between the relationship with my dad and myself. I was a fairly bad student, super unmotivated, bounced around from minimum wage job to minimum wage job. After high school, I enrolled in college for about an hour, and then I dropped out on the first day. I think I met this dude who became a good friend of mine. We skipped class on the first day, and the rest is history about that. And I was kind of on a road to nowhere fast, as the saying goes, when a good friend of mine, very close friend of mine, who was born into this world to become a Marine. Like, both his parents were Marines. Everybody in his family ended up joining the Marine Corps. It was always known that as soon as he got out of high school, he was going to go to Paris Island and, fight the dragon on the bridge. If anybody gets that reference of the old TV commercial. 2 days after we graduated high school, he did do that, and he went on and became a Marine. When he came back from boot camp, it just, transformed, wearing his uniform. I kind of had this, switch flip in me that said, maybe I should go consider joining the military. I was the last person to ever do it. Like, in no way did my character, personality, work ethic, or anything like that make any sense for me joining the military. But I went down to the recruiter's office to talk to the Marine Corps. They weren't there. So the Navy guy pokes his head out of the office and says, "They'll be right back. Come wait in here." And later that day, I was signing papers to join the Navy. So I got totally swindled by the recruiter there. Props to them. They were great. They were good at what they did.
That's great. Well, it's really interesting to me because I feel like I got to know you a little bit just by even watching your podcast, and the way that you describe yourself in your your childhood, you seem so different, so truth driven, really want to understand what is happening, the truth, very clear in your opinions, and you do it so graciously. So it's amazing what your time in the Navy did for you as a person, like really honed in on just who you are. And I love seeing that. I love seeing stories like that. How it just really fine-tuned who you really were meant to be, it seems like.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I try, I try to just see things for how that they actually are and not put my emotional perspective into it to transform it into something that it's not. That's how I kind of approach most things that I come across. And the Navy, I say, I'm quoting, I was at a retirement ceremony for a Master Chief many years ago, and he got up on there on stage for his ceremony, and the first words out of his mouth were, "The Navy saved my life." And that kind of made the hair on the back of my neck stand up, because I knew that was true for me too. Where if I didn't join the Navy, it frightens me to think what might have happened with me. I can't even imagine where I'd be if I stayed in Poughkeepsie. Working at, UPS, unloading trucks in the morning was the last job that I had before going to boot camp. And I just have this feeling that that's exactly where I'd be right now. Just, not that there's anything wrong with this, but I would have never left that warehouse. Never stopped unloading packages. They probably just would have changed from QVC packages to Amazon packages. And that would have been the peak for me. But I really, I just gave myself to the Navy. I tried to embrace everything about it and try to embody that sailor archetype and lean into all of that and put my past behind me, leave home and never look back. And it ended up being the best decision that I ever made.
That's amazing. And even just the type of work that you did too, in, the middle of like the Iraq war. I mean, just how intense that was, and how you were working with a special operations community there. If I understand that correctly. So, I mean, it is amazing how much you have done. And then now giving other veterans and people and great resources a voice. I mean, I know, I love seeing that. I love seeing how much people are thriving after maybe having a harder start. So I want to celebrate you on that. What do you feel like do you have any worst or best moments in your career?
In my career. So I don't know, worst and best moments. There's a lot of I don't know. That's a tough question. There's a lot of, I don't know if I'll answer it correctly, but I'll try. I might in a couple hours say, "Oh, I wish I had said this," but, yeah, well, let me just say first, I did a lot of jobs in the Navy. I had a really interesting career. I joined, depending on who's listening, I joined as an undesignated airman, or in the Navy, or in other branches, you might call that open contract. So it was like just joining and you have no job. So you just say, "I'm going to go to boot camp," and then they can send me wherever they want to do whatever job. And so I ended up as an aviation bosun's mate fuel specialist, working on the flight deck of an aircraft carrier. And I did a bunch of jobs in between, working on helicopters. I was a prison guard in Afghanistan, working with Army MPs. I then, at the halfway point of my career, ended up going to a Naval Special Warfare program to operate small UASs or drones. And that was the best job that I had, was that. Some really great moments there. I mean, got to go back to Afghanistan, got to go to Iraq. Those were some of the best times in my life. I know it might sound weird to say, but when I was there, you wanted to go on those deployments. You wanted to go to Afghanistan, you wanted to go to Iraq, you wanted to go forward. It was even competitive within my peers, because only 2 people got to go to Afghanistan when I went, and it was like, who gets to go, and I love that. That's the community that I wanted to be a part of. especially after doing a detainee ops deployment, where I did get to go boots on the ground and experience that side of the military. So to me, like one of the best moments of my career, one of the top moments of my career was just getting to be there and do those things. You know, every part of that, even the opportunity that existed to go do that was the pinnacle of my career. That was the best part. And the reason I say that is because if I, and only, you know, now at this point in my life, can I say this, is that if I look back on where I came from and where I ended up, it's the unlikeliest of outcomes. You know, the likelier outcome is that I am a total, you know, burnout loser, never does anything with his life, never gets an education, you know, never gets married, never has a family, never travels the world. Like that was the most likely path. If you ran these odds, you know, 1,000 times, 999 times, that's probably what happens. And every day that I consider that didn't happen, I feel incredibly lucky. And I probably owe that to many different mentors and people in the Navy that helped me along the way, great people that I met, and just taking every opportunity that presented itself to me. So any chance that I got to do something different, I just volunteered, whether I knew what I was getting myself into or not. They say the Navy is an acronym for never again volunteer yourself. And I must have thought they said never, ever don't volunteer for anything, because whatever that acronym is, because that's kind of how I approached it. And your other part of your question was worst moments. And I'm not sure, just thinking about it, you know, I don't know what moments could be worse than times that, you know, we've lost friends in the military. Those are low points. But you do get to see people come together in those times and support one another, and you do grow from that, or I should say, you learn from that. In 2007, I was on a helicopter squadron, and we were deployed on a USNS ship, a supply ship, and one of the other detachments that was on the Bonham Richard for training, they lost the helo. It went down, and 4 crew members were killed from the squadron that I was in. And one of the crew members was actually supposed to be on the deployment with us. And he had done all the workups and all the prep to go and deploy with us. And at the very last minute, I mean, like, you know, days before we were to deploy, they said, "Oh, we're going to switch you. We want you to go to this other school and then go on this next deployment." And he actually was part of the crew that flew people out to the ship. And then just a matter of days later, he crashed and was killed. So that was a low point. But it was inspiring to see how people came together, and it taught me a lot about the seriousness of the work that we were doing. Not that I didn't have any concept of it, but when you're working on a helicopter or any aircraft, and then one goes down, you start to think, did anything that I did or, you know, could have done or didn't do was a cause of this crash? People are putting their lives in my hands. People are trusting us to do a good job. So I learned a lot from that. But, you know, as far as low points go, that's got to be it. Nothing that bad that ever happened to me in the Navy compares to, you know, a family having to go through losing a loved one in service.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for sharing that. You know what hit me when you were sharing that? Well, first off, on your first half, you know, it again is amazing to me what can happen to a person when they're just willing. They're plain willing. And it sounds like your willingness and then meeting the right mentors or the right situation really grew you in such a great way. So that's really cool to see. And then the other, you know, what hit me too is that, you know, in the military, you know, you see all these traumatic events and these stories of traumatic events, and the trajectory that each one of these events go in seems like it depends so much on how it's handled afterward. So this traumatic event of losing these 4 people in the helicopter, because you all came together, that was like the silver lining, and just really being able to maybe heal together from that event together, versus a traumatic event that wasn't handled well, and then the person having to deal with that alone, and then the trajectory that comes from there. And so anyway, it's just interesting to hear all these different stories, and how people, what their perspective is, you know, in how that was handled. So anyway, that's really interesting. And I'm really glad to hear that you all came together and there was a silver lining to that sad event. Anyway, I'm going to just ask you a couple more questions, and then we'll open it up to the group to ask questions. So with everything that you've gone through, what would be your advice? Is there anything that you wished you knew when you were starting out on your career? Like, as an older person, you know, not an older person, you're not an old person, but your person now, what would you tell your beginning of your career self?
That is a great question. Other than buy Bitcoin, does everybody say that? So
No, not on here.
Let's see. I would probably say that life is the long game, and when you're going through it, it really doesn't matter if you're young or old. Everything feels very like the biggest thing, the worst thing, the only thing that matters. You'll never get past this. It'll never get better than this. Everything kind of feels that way. And I can't even tell you what the worst thing in the world was that I was dealing with 2 months ago. You know, the thing that I thought was going to be the end of the world 2 months ago, I couldn't even tell you what it is. And it's tough because as we go through life, we never stop having that feeling of, or at least I've never stopped having that feeling of, everything seems like it's the worst thing. Everything seems like it's it could be like something that's just never going to end, like a bad breakup or a traumatic experience, something like that. Or you're one day, you know, out with the guys on training, you know, traveling all the time. Life is great. You're having fun just every day doing the stuff that every kid dreams about doing. It'll never get better than this, you know? And then life goes on and you go, life's pretty good now too. And so I would just say, remember that life is a long game. And when I used to think that I was mature because I knew that I was never going to change and I was the person that I was going to become. But now I think the opposite. Now I think I've matured a little bit because I know that I'm going to frequently change, and I'm willing to, and I'm expecting to, as time goes on. It's funny how that kind of goes. And so that would, thinking about it real quick, maybe that's not my complete thoughts if I had a little more time to think about it, but that's the first thing that comes to mind.
I think that's a great answer. I think that is a great reminder for all of us. I love that. That is cool. Thank you. I also want to revisit before we open up the group is you are now, so you're a veteran and you are now the spouse of an active duty service member.
Yes.
So do you want to talk on that? What is it like for you?
Yeah, so I'm a military spouse. I've assumed her rank as well. So if I see you out there with, you know, your hair's too long or something, I will be saying something. I'm just kidding. So it's given me a really different perspective on military spouses. So being out here in Okinawa, this is a total shout out. Being out here in Okinawa, there's a group called AWWA. It's the American Welfare and Works Association. And they've been around since 1952, helping local Okinawan people and organizations by fundraising and community building. And they've done an amazing job of it. And they've they've made really immeasurable impacts on the community and on relationships between Americans and Okinawan citizens, especially during a time when Okinawa was an American territory, and Americans immediately following World War II were occupying Okinawa effectively after the civilian population was nearly wiped off the face of the earth. And you can imagine that that's a difficult bridge to build. But thanks to spouses who step up to the plate and, say, we'll take this mission on, they did a tremendous amount of work to make those relationships strong in the beginning, which lead us to a fairly healthy and productive and prosperous relationship that we have now with the people out in Okinawa. And the real thing that taught me was being a spouse and having to kind of change my whole life around moving out to Japan with no job, to leave my career, my friendships, the security of the Navy, everything I'd built in San Diego. And instead of, my wife comes out here because she has orders out here to work out here. I'm coming out here to stop working, to lose a lot of the things that identified me or that I used to identify myself. And for a lot of spouses, the military is the reason you find yourself somewhere, but it's not your purpose. And so spouses have to frequently repurpose themselves, and they do so with an incredible amount of grace and humility and generosity, getting into philanthropy and just being a great representation of America, of the American spirit. And they're a huge part of the military mission because they provide support for the service member while they're doing difficult stuff, long hours, frequent travel, unexpected deployments. They're at home kind of making that whole side of a person's life secure so that they can focus on the mission. And it really opened my eyes to looking at it in a way I hadn't before. So just a total shout out to military spouses who make the most out of that position and who have to constantly find ways to start over, start something new. It's a massive sacrifice to make. And I didn't really see that from the active duty side, but I've seen it now from the spouse side.
I am so glad that you shared that. And hearing you say that, I think we need another segment on the military spouse. Another talk. That's powerful. I mean, just to hear it articulated like that. So I appreciate you doing that. I appreciate you sharing that. Are there other men out there that you know of? Now you know Keith, he's out there. Are there other men that you connect with as a military spouse, or is it mostly wives? What is it like for you?
There are some men out here. There's actually like a male dependence social group that existed before the pandemic, and it's mostly wives, and that's just the military is mostly men. And so the spouse group is mostly wives. It just kind of follows numbers wise, but there are some male dependents out here. But when you get out into town, as far as the spouse stuff goes, there's the USO. There are all kinds of base employment opportunities, like working for the like photo video department or the base activities department. People work at the dive shops. People work at the morale, welfare, recreation facilities, MWR facilities, all kinds of stuff like that. There are meetup groups at the different clubs. There's spouses clubs, and there's all this different stuff that you would never know if you're just going to work every day, you're active duty. Spouses go out there and they're mingling and having coffee meetups and all this stuff and networking and figuring out how they can work together. And it's a very resilient community because it's very easy, and it's never been easier to just lock yourself inside and become antisocial. And that leads to anxiety, depressed mood, feeling of loss of purpose, identity, the things you kind of touched on before. But they go out of their way and above and beyond expectations to make opportunities to go meet people and find things to do and find things that are meaningful to do. So anyway, the answer to your question, mostly wives, I guess, short answer.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. Okay, so I have to ask this. Okay, for somebody in such a I just think of, you know, the military as like you think of it as a masculine role. Like, I hope I don't get in trouble for saying that, but that's how I think of it. And then to be a military spouse, like how was that for you to adjust? How long have you been doing it? And how has the adjustment been for you? Like, what was that hard to be in that supportive role for you?
It wasn't really hard. The hard part was like giving up my job. Was tough because I left all my friends. I left this thing that I had really loved doing. That was difficult, but being, acknowledging that my wife is more successful than I would ever be is not hard. I've always said that one thing that's important to me is, and I've always thought this is, I'll never let my ego stand in the way of happiness. And it's very easy to let that happen. For a man, I'm sure I've heard this, you know, I'm not trying to speak for anybody, but I've heard this many times, is that, you know, men typically want to be the provider. They don't want to find themselves feeling purposeless. It's counterintuitive. It goes against all of our instincts, or at least what we've always been taught our whole lives. But it also, but you could be wrong though, too. You know, like, my wife is a physician, and when we met and were dating, I was a civilian contractor in San Diego. I was making a totally good life for myself. I was doing really well. But she'll do far better, you know? And if I was to say, come out here and feel like I needed to go seek some sort of employment or take another contract and start traveling and do all this other stuff that I had looked into when we first found out we were moving to Japan, ultimately I was like, and then what? I just lose all this time I get to spend with my wife. And who's that good for? Really, like, nobody. What do I get? I just get to go hang out with, you know, my buddies more, and say that I have this cool job or something, but it doesn't actually do anybody any good. And it's not needed at this time. And it's, especially coming from a kind of a broken family, I would love to have a successful, happy family. That would be the greatest achievement after the military, is just being a good husband, taking good care of our dog. If we have kids, being a good dad. That is the real most important thing. And then sometimes I'll meet somebody and they'll be like, oh, what do you do? And I'll say, oh, I'm, you know, YouTube. and that can be a bit awkward, but, you know, if somebody has something negative to say about it, screw them. I'm totally happy. And that's the most important thing.
Yeah, that's really great. Thank you for sharing that. We don't have a lot of perspectives like that, you know, that's been articulated. So it's really great to hear your perspective and just how healthy and resilient that is. I mean, that you are, like you said, there's no ego involved in that. It is just you want to build your life with your wife, and this is the best move right now. And now you've got this great podcast so as your outlet, and you've got the people that you can connect with. I just appreciate you sharing that. Thank you so much. That's awesome. So let's go ahead and open it up. Since we have quite a few people, if you don't mind, just because of all the Zoom delay and all that sort of thing, if you could just raise your hand, and then I can make sure I don't miss anybody. Who would like to comment or question? Paul, good to see you, Paul. Do you have a question for Max?
I have a comment for him.
Yes.
And that is that they Naval Hospital at the Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton has openings for physicians.
Well, we're actually getting stationed there this summer.
Oh, is that right?
Yep.
Very good. Very good.
So,
well, perhaps we'll meet.
Maybe we'll see you there.
I live about 10 miles from the hospital.
Oh, great. Yeah.
So
we'll be there.
Anyway, just a job opportunity.
Always
That's
appreciated. Always appreciated. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Thanks, Paul.
How are you doing, Sarah?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Good to see you.
That's good. Yeah, it's good to see you too.
Daniel.
Sarah and I had an interesting encounter along with Scott Duncan at a little coffee shop down in San Marcos. And it was the most enjoyable thing I have done in a very long time. Just to sit together and converse about whatever topics came to the surface. And I continue to share the enthusiasm for being able to do that because it really was valuable.
Oh, we had a good time, Paul. It was so nice to see you and meet. And for anybody in San Diego on, let's see, May 21st, we're going to get together at the beach. I'm going to put something out for anybody who's local who'd like to come and have a beach day with us. Thanks,
Cool.
Paul. Daniel, do you have a question or a comment?
Yep, I had a question. What made you start the podcast, and what's your long-term goal with that, or your transition as a mil spouse / veteran?
That's a great question. So actually, this brings Rob Sweetman into the mix here. So when I was getting out, I was so lucky that I could be because I was working in Naval Special Warfare in San Diego. I was so lucky that I had the opportunity to join a program called the Honor Foundation, which was cohort 11. It was veteran transition focused program, networking group, educational course of learning, post-military, what post-military life's going to be like and setting people up for success. And in these classes, you have dozens of Navy SEALs, Green Berets, MARSOC, Raiders, Air Force, Special Operations, AFSOC. You've got incredible coaches, inspiring speakers, people who are brilliant on kind of relearning yourself. And as I went through this, really just like everything else I did when I was working in Naval Special Warfare, I'm just happy to be there. I'm just smiling because I'm in the room. What a great opportunity that is for people who are in the enabler role. I mean, really, really, really a beautiful thing. And I owe a lot of what I do today to the Honor Foundation because I met so many great people that I still talk to on a regular basis. And it inspired me to want to share some of these really amazing things that I learned veterans were doing. And I wanted to share some of these things that I was learning. So, put that aside for a second. In 2015, when I got back from Iraq, I got into filmmaking. I always wanted to, and I always had a passion for film. And I had some, money in the bank. And so I just started buying camera gear, like one thing after the next, a camera, a microphone, some lights, a tripod, another camera, another light, another microphone. And before I know it, I'm doing like film production. And through some film networking in San Diego, I came across this public access radio station, which in San Diego, it's 89.1 if you guys are ever driving around. And they were always taking applications for new talk show ideas or radio show ideas. And so really randomly, again, never, ever don't volunteer yourself. at one of these meetings, I was like, what about a show about all the cool stuff veterans are doing in San Diego? And they were like, great idea. Do you want to do that? You can do that. And I was like, no way. Really? And I had no plan, nothing. So I started to formulate one. And a few weeks later, on Veterans Day, 2017, which was a fitting first episode, we went live on the radio in San Diego, the ScuttleButt show first episode. And Rob Sweetman was our second guest ever. And it was in this dilapidated shack of a back room with some computers and microphones, and it was really hot in there and in a really sketchy part of the town. And it was great, and it was a great opportunity. So on Friday afternoons, we would do this live show, have cool veteran guests on. I met a lot of awesome people that way. I got into we would have a guest on, then I would go to their business with a camera and film a special about their business and post that on YouTube. And so that's how the show started. And I would love to get back to doing that stuff. So the plan going forward, Daniel, to answer your question, is when I get back to San Diego, I want to start doing more in-person stuff with cool veterans and doing more video stuff. While out here in Okinawa, speaking of that AWWA group, I just finished production on a documentary film about that organization that we're going to premiere at the beginning of May and figure out how we're going to distribute. And it was a huge project. We filmed it for about 1.5 years. And it's this really, really wonderful story of military spouses coming together, the military community coming together to help the local population when no one asked them to. They just did it. And so doing more projects like that, doing more video stuff, continuing the podcast, continuing the YouTube channel, continuing the TikTok, everything. That's the plan going forward with that. And I have some other bigger projects going on, but yeah, that's the objective moving forward, is to continue to do this and continue to grow it. I hope that answers your question.
That's awesome. Max, if there's anything I can do to support that effort, just remember me and remember this platform. It's wonderful. Yeah, and I love the Honor Foundation too. I've got 4 good friends who are coaches there, and they're awesome.
Yeah.
Rob.
Hey there. So I think Max got like 500,000 views last week on TikTok. Just saying. He's kind of popular. So Max, I have a question for you. You've been in Okinawa for some time, and I'm not sure if I could even do it. The food, just changing the scene. I'm sure they have a lot of good food there, but there's a lot of things that I've grown to love in San Diego. You're coming back to San Diego. What's the first thing that you want to eat?
So, yeah. So, I really want to get my hands on a good California burrito, something with like some crispy French fries, some good guacamole, some carne asada. I'm really looking forward to that. That's going to be great. So we have a couple spots on the list: Lucha Libre, Don Pancho's. So I'm excited to go get some good Southern California Mexican food, which they don't really have out here. Some places do okay tacos, but nothing like a San Diego burrito, especially not at 1 a.m, when you really need it the most. So I'm super excited for that. But I'll just say, thank you for the question, Rob. It's good to see you. The food out here in Okinawa is incredible. I've never eaten so good. And I mean, like, we've changed the way that we eat, like much healthier, much cleaner, fresher ingredients, all that stuff. It's going to be really sad to leave. Like, they have great grocery stores, produce stores out here, one's called the JA, all this fresh, like from the farm produce. And oh man, I'm going to be so sad when we leave. There's something out here called gourd or bitter melon. People in Okinawa live to be exceptionally old. It's a blue zone, meaning it's one of the 7 highest levels of centurions, people who live to be over 100 in the world. And they, attribute some of that to the diet. And one of the things they eat out here is bitter melon, which if anybody out there has ever had it, I thought it was very bad the first time, but I've grown to enjoy it quite a bit. We eat a lot of pumpkin, a lot of ramen, a lot of tofu, and a lot of sushi. And I'm going to be extremely, extremely sad when we leave and don't have access to that anymore. Oh man, breaks my heart.
I don't know what's
I'll
your
give
body.
you a good, I'll give you a good sushi place to go to when you get back here, Max.
Sure. Thank you.
What is your body going to do when you eat that California burrito?
Probably reject it or eject it.
Ejected. Yeah, that's a popular one here for sure.
Yeah.
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
willing to bite the bullet for that one though.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, I know. That's a big favorite here for sure. Yeah, San Diego Mexican food, you just can't beat it.
No,
I know, it's good. It
Yeah.
is really good.
it's really good.
So I look forward to that for you. I'm not a California burrito fan because it's like a little too loaded, but I know my boys love it. So yeah, I hear that.
Yeah.
That's funny. Anybody else have a comment or a question? So when do you said this summer you're actually going to come back? Is that what you said? July? You're going to be headed back and then you're going to do everything that you just talked about, kind of the podcast, when is this documentary coming out, the AWWA?
So we're having a premiere out here in Okinawa in May, and then we're going to figure out how to best distribute it. I want to submit it to the GI Film Festival
Oh,
and
yeah.
and try to figure out a way to share it that'll be best for that organization. If anybody out there wants to check out AWWA, it's facebook.com/AWWA, if I can give that plug, and you can see what they do. And if you want to get involved, or if you're coming out to Okinawa, or if you're ever in Okinawa, you might realize that you supported them without even realizing it. A lot of people don't know that they exist, and I want the world to know that this is a thing that, you know, military spouses did and created, and it's awesome.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting on that and checking that out. I'm glad that you brought that up. And I really, I just loved what you shared about just the strength and the power of the spouse. That was really eye-opening to me. I mean, I knew they must be, you know, strong supporters to be able to support the jobs that you all have or have had, but just to hear you share that, that was great. Thanks. Daniel.
Is that video fully done?
It is. I have people as beta viewers right now watching it, and so there's a done version of it, and I'm just waiting for feedback to see how it's being received.
Okay, because I have distribution in 213 countries with my digital TV network, and I got about a month of free spots. So if you have it done before May 6th, I can distribute you for free.
Okay, yeah, we'll have to talk about that after this for sure. Thank you.
Okay.
Awesome.
Awesome. Cool. So Max, just as we kind of wind things down, what do you want people to take away from your interview? What last thoughts do you have, like, for people that may even be struggling or are having a hard time in transition, finding their purpose after military? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. We talk about it a lot on my show. There are tons of programs out there that people can look to for help with anything they might be struggling with. Rob has 62 Romeo and the Exist Tribe. And if you're having trouble with sleep, you can, talk to him. So we even have somebody on the program right now who helps veterans. And there's probably 10,000 organizations out there that you can find that help veterans. And I would encourage people to seek them out if they are struggling with something. If there's a specific issue that you're having, to not be afraid to ask for help. There's nothing wrong with that. You would certainly not be the first one to do so. And I don't know. I don't think that there's too many people out there who would mock someone or look down on someone for seeking help, but we get it in our heads that that is going to happen. We're our own worst enemy in that regard in many ways. So if anybody out there is having trouble with anything, please don't hesitate to ask for help. There's tons of people out there who really sincerely want to help. As far as transition goes, somebody asked me for some broad stroke advice one time, and they were still in the Navy, and I said, you know, the military, the Navy's going to end for you one way or the other, like it or not. The military is going to, you know, have their way with you and then boot you out, whether it's forced retirement because you're at your high year tenure, or you've done maximum years, or you make one mistake in your career and you get kicked out, or you're a victim of downsizing or whatever it is. The military is going to end for you. And it's not hard to be successful, but it can be hard to be happy. And don't mix the two up. So you can go out and get a job and seems like you have it all. Money is well, and you know, things look good, but you have to figure out what's really going to make you happy, like what's going to make your life whole, and seek that out as number one. And if you don't do that, nothing else is going to fill that gap. And I think that I did that with taking on who knows how many hobbies and side projects and things that I just tried, burying myself into LinkedIn learning and looking up how to write HTML, do graphic design, edit film, you name it. If I thought I had the opportunity to learn it or join a club or something, doing improv comedy, literally anything I could get my hands on, I was signing up for. And then, you know, every night I've got an event, every day I'm trying to learn extra stuff on top of work. And eventually I was like, what am I doing? What do I think that I'm missing? You know? And once I looked at it from that perspective, everything got a lot simpler. I shrunk down the things that I put into my life into the things that make me absolutely fully happy. And then things all of a sudden got really clear and really, really simple. And all of my decisions now are based around those few things, and life is good. So just try to identify in your own life what is most important, what's going to make you most happy. And when you look in the mirror, you're going to have to feel good about what you see. And so keep that in mind and take the best path to fill those parts of your life up. That's what I do.
That's awesome. I really appreciate you, Max. I really do. You know, I feel like what you bring to your talks and what you brought today, I feel like you modeled what humility looks like, what willingness looks like, and then the real fruit from that, your curiosity towards like your hobbies, and just the fruit of that, of really, like, again, like on your podcast, you just see your enthusiasm on there, and you see just that you're excited about stuff, and you are very interested in things. And again, just your humility of like, you know what, I want to be happy versus saying that I am doing this or I'm doing that or whatever. So I think those are really powerful things to model in this arena for people that may be struggling. And you're a great example. So I just want to thank you. Thanks for the interview today. I'm going to turn off the recording, but you can hang on for a second.